Hello guys, JB here, and as soon as it's international break I'm going to do episode 2 of my commentating stories, 10 years from doing YouTube commentaries, and I'm going to talk about Euro 2016. I'm not going to speak about England in a positive light because Euro 2016 was one of my first tournaments as a YouTube commentator, and I did all the games myself. At the I did 20 of them for every round. Did at least two games. I did the home nations at least once who qualified, plus the Republic. But I'm going to touch on England's performance in that tournament. Now, going into it, there was all sorts of debate who should be playing where, and should Rooney have been playing at the tip of the diamond midfield, or should he have been playing up top? I always at the time suggested that we should have played a 4-4-2 diamond. There was a lot of school of thought that Rashford should have started some of the games because he'd just broken onto the scene at Manchester United as a young 17-year-old, and he'd done really well and was free scoring for Manchester United at that time. And he came on in, I think it was a Europa League game, and then just took the games by storm and won an FA Cup winners medal, I think, that year when beating Crystal Palace. So we're all thinking, right, Euro 2016, this is it now. We're gonna have a right, So Roy picks him. But there was a lot of questionable decisions about his squad that year. I mean, Jack Wilshere didn't play much football. In fact, I think he played 60 minutes all season for Arsenal because of injury and one thing or another. But he got selected. I was also not a big fan of Daniel Sturridge at that point because I didn't think he should have been in the team. There were several people that, several players. Jamie Vardy got in. Again, you could have said he's a fearless guy. He just won the title with Leicester. You're thinking, right, Kane, Vardy up front, Rashford on the bench if need be. They were the three strikers we really desperately needed. We didn't need Sturridge, even though he scored the winner against Wales, but that's another story. The first game I didn't commentate on. I was at a friend's house at the time, but we should have won the game against Russia, and we ended up letting in a late goal where Joe Hart just let it go through. He'd been culpable. But I did commentate on my first England match at that tournament against Wales, the old enemy, and there'd been this big build-up since the draw that we were going to see what sort of England we're going to turn up here, because we didn't play well against Russia. I don't think there's any doubt about it. And I'm sat there, it was a lunchtime kick-off. I was working for a windows and doors company at the time, Ultra Frame, who they kindly let me use the name for, to promote their products in the broadcasts at the time. And I did the commentary. It was a lunchtime kick-off, I remember. It was in Lons, and what I remember about it was there was all sorts of build-up and things like that, and there was I'll just go back to the Russia game before that. I mean, Hodgson had got it wrong right at the start. Harry Kane taking corners and one thing or another, but so. Despite us getting a point, we should have taken all three. We did get a lot of criticism, and rightly so. I mean, I was very disappointed. So we go into the Welsh game. Wales had heroically won their first match, so they'd already got 2 points ahead of us, which is fair enough. I think they deserved that. So they've taken they've taken 3 points. First half, I thought we were poor. And then the free kick that Wales get given, it's a debatable one if I remember rightly. I can't remember now offhand how it came about, the free kick, but there's a bit of controversy towards it. But it's 35 yards out. But then again, it's Gareth Bale, one of the best footballers of the world at the time, and you're thinking, right, get that ball right, Joe. And I'm thinking to myself, get it right, Joe. And I'm commentating away, and anyway, Bale hits this effort. It's not the best effort he's ever hit in his life, Gareth Bale, but he's hit it with, the balls did swerve a bit, but that's no excuse for Joe Hart, and he fumbled it into the back of the net. and my first thoughts were disaster, calamity, you know. So I think, I can't remember what I said in the commentary, but it was 1-0 to Wales, and it was, you know, I give me the idea. I mean, we could have 1 point from 2 games at this point. And I said at half time before the second half, when I had my break, I said, this second half, it's do or die for Roy Hodgson. This is England future rests on the next 45 minutes. Not knowing that some 10 days later, 10 days and 2 games later, the same fate would be behold him against Iceland. But we'll come to that later. Anyway, so we get out of jail, we get an early goal, and then Daniel Sturridge comes up with a 1-2, plays a 1-2 with Vardy, I think, and then just rifles it in at the near post, and we get out of jail. So we win 2-1, and I think, great. Then we commentated on, I think it was Slovenia or Slovakia, I think it was, third game. It was a tough game. It was a tough game. They were trying every time wasting tactic in the book. Having said that, though, England just weren't positive enough in the game. You know, it just seemed, you know, after the euphoria of beating Wales, the game it descended into a farce and a 0-0 draw. And yes, I had a bit of a pop at Martin Skirtle at the time because he was time wasting. There was a couple of other Slovenians I had a pop at in the commentary, if I remember rightly. It was, you know, that was a tough old 90 minutes to describe, really. But so and then on the same night, Wales go and booked, I think it was 2, maybe 3 goals in the other game against Russia, and do what we should have done in the first match, put the Russians to the sword. So they finished top of the group with no worries. We've got Iceland. We thought we were going to get a good job, but then again, if we'd have beaten Iceland, if we were to beat Iceland in the next 16, we would have had to go instead of France for the quarterfinals to play the French, who at that point were looking a really good side. Now Iceland, you know, they played in some entertaining games, none more so than a 3-3 against Portugal, where they just it was like watching a game in a playground. It was one of those, you score, I score, you score, I score, and you know, I didn't commentate on it because I was working at the time, but I do remember watching it on TV. I thought, this lot can actually play. So everyone on radio, everyone on television was saying, well, we've got a good draw there, Iceland, it's a gimme, we're in the quarterfinals, we're playing the French in 5 days time on the Sunday. Little did we know, little what they knew. I knew that Iceland we shouldn't take Iceland for granted. I didn't think we should have took Iceland for granted in what was, and it was a dramatic night. Now, I've got the story to tell. I had been working at Ultraframe, and everyone just rushed back. I think we finished about 6:30. I don't know where we were, anyway. So we rushed back. I think I got home. I got to the studio about 7:30, my studio at 7:30. And I still had my shirt and tie on from my day job. I can remember the same thing very well. I had a stripy shirt on and a pink tie, and I loosened my tie, and I thought, well, I'm just going to keep the clothes on and just do quickly a bit of homework. I'd done a bit of homework the night before, but I just needed to write down the 2 teams who were starting and the referee, and away we went. There were no VAR in those days, and we settled down. And it's the only game I've ever commentated on for JB Sports, or the commentary on, where I've actually wore a tie, a smart shirt or a tie. So there you go. That's the one abiding memory of that night. But I'm watching the game. I'm watching the match, and England started actually quite well, if memory serves me right. It's because we got a penalty, I think, was it the 5th minute or something like that. Anyway, Harry Kane takes the penalty. Is it Harry Kane or is it Wayne Rooney? Wayne Rooney takes the penalty and puts it in 1-0, and I think, right, you know, you're thinking floodgates are going to open and everything else. And then 60 seconds later, now, what I'd also noticed in the last game, Aaron Gunnarsson, who was a former Cardiff City player, had a very secret weapon in his armoury. the long throw-in. It was just as good as a corner, basically, like Dave Challoner and Rory did that before it. And I thought, we have to mark up, because I knew mentally, I made a mental note in their last group game, that 3-3 draw with Portugal, that his throws were so good and so accurate, his long throw-ins were so good and so accurate, that they were very difficult to defend against. And I said in the commentary, England have got to watch them. He's got a very good long throwing repertoire, I think the words I used that night. And sure enough, 60 seconds later, he gets a throw in middle inside the England half. He throws it into the box, and it breaks to a guy called Ragnar Sigurdsson. He just knocks it in. Joe Hart hasn't got a price, but England was so static. England was so static at the back, it was unbelievable. It was so unbelievable. And then I think Dele Alli came very close. I think he hit the top of the bar. Rooney went close. After that, England just took over and then played. And then we conceded a very freak goal. Sigvardsson turns on the edge of the D, hits it right-footed, and it's not going in any more than about 3 miles an hour. And you think, Joe Hart, you know, he's won 70 odd caps for his country. You think, right, he's gonna grab this, no problem. It goes inexplicably through his hands, through both of his hands, and into the net. And I'm in shock, and I go 2-1 to Iceland, like that. But I'm in shock and not being able to believe that Joe Hart has actually done that. I know he made a mistake against Wales, but this was a catastrophic one. And then I was calling on substitutes, so Iceland going 2-1 up, and then I'm calling on Roy Hodgson. It's do or die now, the words I used at half time. He brought on Vardy when it was too late. He brought on Rashford, who did more in 5 minutes than what people like Sturridge and Kane had done all night. And what a corner at the end. The second half was so, it felt like 40 years, not 45 years, not 45 minutes. You could just sense that it dragged on for so long, because we weren't playing well. We were sort of getting stuck in the mud, so to speak. And anyway, Joe Hart goes up for the corner and he flicks it wide. The whistle goes. Cue Bedlam. The Iceland team played their socks off. They defended like tigers. When they attacked, they looked sharp. And I knew this would happen. If England didn't take them seriously enough, they would get mullered. And sure enough, they did. And I said, it was do or die for Roy Hodgson. And it is die for Roy Hodgson. Firstly, we were out of the European Championships. And we should not have, in a game that really, on paper, and before people say to me, your game was not won on paper, shocks happen. But it was the worst defeat by an England side in a major tournament since the US beat us in Belo Horizonte in 1950. That's how disgusting the performance was, and the manner of the defeat was, because people were comparing it to Belo Horizonte in 1950. Because that team in that day had Sir Tom Finney, Sir Stanley Matthews and all that. We had superstars in ours. But the problem was, Roy Hodgson didn't know what his best system was or his best side was. I went on several rants about it afterwards. Anyway, I was still on air at the time, and it cut in the television. I think ITV were covering the match on television. They cut to a press conference with Roy Hodgson. So I turned the volume. So basically, I turned the sound up, put the microphone to the speaker, and we got Roy Hodgson's resignation speech live on JB Sports, or JB Clark YouTube channel at the time, which was surreal. And it was one of those surreal experiences. England had gone out, and Roy had said I wasn't good enough, and And we all know what happened next under Gareth Southgate after, you know. I also commentated on the England game after that with Sam Allardyce when we won 1-0, and then he got sacked because of certain allegations that gone on in certain newspapers that he'd taken buns in a sting or Sunday newspaper sting. The rest of the tournament, I think, with, you know, the rest of the tournament I absolutely enjoyed. I enjoyed the 4 quarter-finals that we did. You know, the Italian-Germany game, where it was probably one of the longest penalty shootouts I've ever commentated on. It must have gone on about 20 minutes. Wales getting through. I thought Sam Vokes was an absolute sensation. I'd less than 2 months previously, commentated on a vital Sam Vokes goal to win Burnley promotion back to the Premier League against QPR. 2 months on, with Wales 2-1 up in a European Championship quarter-final. They'd also beaten the Republic. They'd also beaten Northern Ireland in the second round, and they were very fortunate to do so, I thought, the Welsh. But in the quarter-finals, they played sensationally. Went behind to a terrific goal, and then all of a sudden, second half, you know, it just went, you know, ear to ear and ear to there and all that sort of jazz. Goal, Robson Connor equalised. Was it? No, I think it might have been Ashley Williams who equalised, and then Noel Robson Connor with that back flick put Wales 2-1 up, and then with seconds to go in the second half, the ball gets crossed in. I forget who crosses it in, but it's a pinpoint accurate cross, and Sam Vokes just gets a slight flick on it and nods it past the keeper, and I've totally lost it in the commentary box. I've gone, you know, if you're listening back to the commentary, the original commentary on YouTube, you'll understand why. He's a Burnley man. Listen, I haven't got Welsh allegiances or anything like that, but at that particular time, you know, I didn't care. Wales were about to make history. They'd never reached a major semi-final before in any major tournament, and here they were, Chris Coleman's men, making history, and it was just unbelievable. Unbelievable. I was there moments, and it was just surreal. They lost to Portugal in the final, at semi-finals, determinedly so. I thought Portugal were just too good. The France-Germany one, that was a good semi-final. Griezmann, it was the Griezmann show. I absolutely enjoyed watching Antoine Griezmann play. I thought he was brilliant. And then the final, which was actually very forgettable. The only thing I remember the final for was with a winning goal. I forget who scored, but it was a terrific goal to win it. But it's best to remember for Ronaldo going off after 20 minutes. And I really remember Ronaldo just cheering the team on from the bench. Even though he's injured, he's there giving it all for the cause from the bench. He's almost like managing the team. And they win the game. It wasn't a great final. I felt sorry for France. I would have loved them to have won the tournament in their own country. But Portugal scored a great goal to win it. And that was my bad memories of Euro 2016, really. But England were so bad. It was like an end of an era. And you know, I'd been calling. The thing that baffled me with Roy Hodgson was that not 2 years ago I'd been calling for his head after a disastrous World Cup in Brazil, where we didn't get out the first round. But I stuck with him. You can win 10 out of 10 in qualifiers, but the problem was when we got to the main stage, we just froze. There was a European Championships, and we were tipped to go very far, at least semi-final. And to get knocked out by a minnow, with all due respect to Iceland, was not good, not seen good enough, and hence why he resigned. And that was a low point for English football at that point. 2 years later, it would become more of a high in the next tournament, but that's more in another episode. But I hope you've enjoyed our look back at Euro 2016. From a commentator's perspective, that was episode 2 of my commentating stories. I hope you've enjoyed it. It was a great summer. I enjoyed it. It was an enjoyable commentary, big tournament to do, 20 games. I did. Don't forget to join us for episode very, very soon, where we look at Burnley's fortunes over the 10 years I've commentated on. So Burnley are next up in episode 3. But until then, have a fantastic day, and I'll see you for episode 3. Bye for now.